I bought Tesla a long time ago, and I know a ton of people that wish they had bought Tesla way before it skyrocketed. Over the last 10 years, if you had invested just $10,000 into Tesla, you would have had over 120,000, upwards of 150, 200K, depending on the time when you bought it, but your portfolio would have at least returned over 1,000%. And that's a return that could have been a sizable down payment on a house. You could have bought a fancy car, or you could have reinvested that capital into something else and made even more money. And let's be real, that single investment crushed the S&P 500 multiple times over. And sure, Tesla stock hasn't been the same meteoric rally in the past 4 years, but its story remains iconic. And this same story leaves us wondering, are there any other opportunities out there like a Tesla? Especially if they're tied to Elon Musk, the man who seemingly turned, science fiction, even though, again, electric cars have been around for a while, but science fiction into reality, right? And so the short answer is yes, it is possible to find the next Tesla. And yes, it might be associated to Elon Musk, maybe not. But today's video is all about the ones that are associated to Elon and how you can invest into these companies. And yes, most of these, in fact, all of these besides Tesla, are technically not publicly traded. So it kind of makes it difficult for the average investor to buy it, but don't worry, I found a way around these blockades. I'm gonna share with you my strategy for getting indirect exposure to these groundbreaking companies. And yes, I've done all the research so you don't have to. So here's exactly how you can own a piece of all of Elon's companies he's ever been involved in. And of course, the easiest one being PayPal, which I'm not even gonna include because, well, they have a publicly traded company and he was once a big participant in that company. So we're gonna put that one on the back burner. Now, the first one we have is Tesla, or AKA SolarCity. And if you wanted to invest in this company, all you need to do is buy Tesla stock. That's because Tesla acquired SolarCity back in 2016. Now, Tesla's solar division has incredible upside. If they can scale their solar and battery businesses while improving battery density and recharge speeds, Tesla's potential goes beyond just cars. Think about the renewable energy market, which is projected to hit $2 trillion by 2030. And while Tesla isn't exactly a cheap stock from a valuation standpoint, it's still the best way to invest in SolarCity's future. And if Tesla robots do well and robot taxis do well, that's a whole nother talking point, and I can make a whole video on that. But there's another company that I wanted to talk about, which I think has insane potential, but it is a private company, and that is Neuralink.
Neuralink.
I'm sure you've heard of it, unless you're maybe living under a rock. Neuralink is a brain chip company aiming to revolutionize the way we interact with technology. And it isn't just sci-fi fantasy. Neuralink's goal is to address critical health challenges like Alzheimer's, paralysis, and muscular dystrophy. And their tech involves implanting a chip into the brain that allows users to control electronics with their thoughts. Not by looking at a cursor and telling it where to go, literally just thinking about it. Yes, it is science fiction, and it's already showing promise. With 3 patients at the time of making this video, and patient 0 reportedly using the chip to regain functionalities they'd lost for years. They can literally play games on the computer that they haven't been able to play since before they lost the ability to, do basic function. And the long-term vision of this company is even more incredible. There's a chance that in the next 10, 20, or 30 years, this technology could improve to the point to allow users to interact with tech at lightning speeds, and even cooler, be able to interact with other users at lightning speeds too. Imagine talking to a friend at 10 or even 100x the speed of today, with no delay and way more accurately. Do you want to know the bad news?
No! God, please, no! No!
Well, like I said before, Neuralink is a private company. The good news, you can still own a chunk of this company, even if it never goes public. You might be asking, how? Well, this is indirect investing. One of the best ways to gain exposure to Neuralink is through early stage venture funds like Founders Fund or Lux Capital, which have backed Neuralink in the past. Alternatively, you can invest in companies focusing on brain-computer interface tech like Synchron Inc. or Abbott Laboratories, which are developing parallel solutions. And of course, there is Google Ventures, which is owned by parent company Google, and that Google Ventures company bought a stake in Neuralink in the early days. So by owning Google, you own Google Ventures, which also owns Neuralink. Now, speaking of Google, you probably have heard of Starlink, and you probably have heard of SpaceX. So what about SpaceX and Starlink? And how do you get involved? So these are perhaps, I would consider, the crown jewels of Elon's portfolio. And while they're technically the same entity, Starlink is growing so fast, it feels like its own company. SpaceX, which handles space exploration rockets and satellite launches, has a valuation of over $350 billion at the time I'm making this video. And in private markets, Starlink, its satellite internet division, is changing the game by providing high-speed internet to underserved areas worldwide. And soon, they could provide internet across the globe, literally anywhere in the world. And currently, SpaceX is not publicly traded, but there are ways to gain exposure. Like I said before, there's a will, there's a way, and this is how. First, you can invest in ETFs or mutual funds with stakes in SpaceX through private equity. Funds like ARK Space Exploration ETF or certain hedge funds indirectly hold SpaceX shares. You can also invest in companies SpaceX contracts with, which is, I think, a little bit of a sneaky way of doing it, like buying Iridium Communications or Maxar Technologies. These firms provide satellite and infrastructure critical to SpaceX operation, which is also potentially companies that SpaceX might acquire in the future, and people that own it might benefit. So that's another way you can get involved. Now, there's a third way, and that is to watch for a potential Starlink IPO. Elon has even hinted at taking Starlink public in the past, maybe sometime in the future, to increase their capital while keeping SpaceX private. And there is a fourth way, and that is, again, speaking of Google, you can literally buy into Google, which owns Google Ventures, which has invested in a funding round into SpaceX in the early days. So again, indirect exposure, super powerful way to buy into just a bunch of tech companies that are still on the ground floor, at least in terms of that are still private. So next, let's talk about X.AI. Now this is Elon's artificial intelligence venture. While details on X.AI are limited, it's positioned to compete directly with OpenAI, and we'll actually go over that in a minute. X.AI is rumored to focus on creating AI systems that align with human values, something Elon has been vocal about since leaving OpenAI. And for those of you who don't know, yes, he worked at OpenAI. For indirect exposure into X.AI, look into NVIDIA, because it's a major player in AI hardware and software. And since every AI company, including X.AI, requires GPUs to train their models, and NVIDIA is a no-brainer investment. That is a little bit of a joke. Maybe, I don't know, no-brainer, but they use their chips to make artificial intelligence, which is technically a brain.
Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Okay, anyway. Alternatively, investing in companies advancing AI applications like Microsoft or Alphabet can also offer broader exposure. Now, I did want to talk about OpenAI because we're speaking of AI, and we can't really skip OpenAI because it's known for creating ChatGPT and a bunch of other similar products that are widely used on an insanely global scale. And OpenAI's valuation has skyrocketed past $100 billion at this point. However, the company is structured as a capped profit entity, making direct investment a little bit tricky. So your best bet here is buy Microsoft, since they've invested over $10 billion into OpenAI, and every success OpenAI achieves feeds directly into Microsoft's Azure cloud platform and products like Copilot. By owning Microsoft stock, you're essentially betting on OpenAI's continued success, and personally, I don't see them going away anytime soon. And last but not least, we have to talk about Twitter. Now, Elon's purchase of Twitter, now rebranded as X, I still don't want to call it that, but it is what it is. It was really one of the most polarizing acquisitions in tech history. While X remains private, there are indirect ways to invest in its ecosystem. Consider companies benefiting from X's growth, like ad tech firms or social media competitors driving innovation due to X's market shifts. Additionally, watch for partnerships X might forge with existing public companies to implement features like, payments or video hosting or AI integrations. As a bonus, I wanted to mention The Boring Company. Personally, I wouldn't invest in The Boring Company because, well, they haven't been super successful, but The Boring Company focuses on tunneling technology, aiming to revolutionize urban transportation and alleviate traffic congestion while still private. It is backed by funds like Vi Capital and Sequoia Capital, and so for indirect exposure, consider investing in companies working on infrastructure or tunneling projects such as Caterpillar Inc. or ACOM. And I wanted to give you guys the big overview. Okay, this is like the big picture. The opportunity potential of investing in Elon Musk's portfolio of companies values greatly based on each company's growth trajectory and market impact. So here's a very detailed breakdown of their potential and estimated returns, factoring real world data. Again, always do your own research, but let's talk about which one has the most potential. So in my opinion, could be wrong, top opportunity for the next 10, 20 years is probably Starlink, aka SpaceX. So Starlink stands out due to its massive addressable market in global satellite internet and its projected revenue growth. According to reports, Starlink aims for $30 billion in annual revenue by 2030. Driven by its leadership in satellite connectivity and the demand for internet in underserved regions, if Starlink goes public, it could rival Tesla's early explosive growth. And assuming Starlink's valuation grows at, let's say, a conservative CAGR of 15%, that's slower than Tesla's historical growth, but reasonable for a rapidly scaling tech company. And maybe worst case scenario, 10%. A $10,000 investment would grow to approximately $70,000 in about 20 years. Best case scenario, let's say 20% growth, that same 10,000 would reach closer to $383,000 in 20 years. So huge potential in my opinion. And I wanted to compare that to something like, let's say, Neuralink, for example, and SolarCity. I think Neuralink, its long-term potential is tied to the adoption of brain chip, computer interfaces. If the technology succeeds, Neuralink could redefine industries. However, it's very speculative because the nature of this technology, right? And so there's FDA approvals, there's people trust in this tech, and, ads won't play in your head while you have a chip, in your literal brain. Those are all like questions yet to be answered. I mean, mind control is an obvious worry. So that's something that Neuralink has that most of these companies don't really have in terms of risk. Then Tesla, of course, SolarCity. I think Tesla remains a steady bet on renewable energy, electric vehicles, with a historical CAGR of around 50%. And then we also have OpenAI, right? Which is, indirect exposure. You're not actually buying OpenAI, you're buying Microsoft. But even that, Microsoft provides lower volatility, which is kind of nice because they have a ton of revenue-driven initiatives. And a $10,000 investment in Microsoft growing at, let's say, 9% a year would yield about $60,000 in 20 years. Now, of course, again, totally dependent on the market. And again, always do your own research. But investing in Musk's companies offers, I think, massive innovation-driven upside. While Tesla and Microsoft are probably more safer bets, let's call them, Starlink likely has the greatest potential for exponential returns, especially if it goes public. A $10,000 investment could transform into that $383,000 figure that I was talking about, with purchase price and obviously a bit of luck. And who knows? The next Tesla level opportunity might just be sitting in his portfolio, or maybe it's in your portfolio already. But I want to hear from you. Let me know in the comments which company you're most excited about or how you're planning to invest in the Musk empire. If at all, let me know why or why not, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks so much for watching, and YouTube thinks you'll enjoy one of these two pieces of content here.